So a lot of people asked how I make my buttercream, so I thought I'd share this tutorial. I use a Swiss meringue buttercream, which I find lighter and more airy. The first thing I do is bring out all of my ingredients to get to room temperature, then I start organising to separate my egg whites. When separating egg whites, a good hack that I have learned is to do it in a separate bowl. When making a meringue, you don't want any of the egg yolk to get into the whites because the meringue will not work. So for every egg white that I do it into a separate bowl and then I measure it out into the bowl that I'll be using. Then to that I add my caster sugar and then I bring it over to a bain-marie and we're going to gently heat this and whisk at the same time until all the sugar has dissolved. Doing it this way ensures that it's going to be smooth rather than grainy, and you don't want a grainy Swiss meringue buttercream. Do this on a low to medium low heat, and the best way to check if it's done is to test it with your fingers and rub it between your finger and thumb. If you can still feel grains of sugar, then it's not done. But as soon as you can't feel any grains of sugar, it's done. I take this straight off the heat and put it onto a tea towel and just clean the outside of the bowl so that any residue of water that was on there is removed before then placing it on my stand mixer. With the whisk attachment, I then whisk this on a high speed, so on my KitchenAid, that's number 10, for about 10 to 15 minutes until you get stiff peaks. I was doing 2.5 batches here, which is why my bowl is so filled up, and the whisking did take a lot longer at this point for me, but I kept it going until I had stiff enough peaks, and then I separated half of it into another bowl before doing the next step. But obviously you won't have to do this if you're just making one batch because it will all fit into the bowl perfectly. You can see here how I have nice stiff peaks, and also the mixture will have gone down to room temperature at this point, which is vital for the next step. While you're waiting for it to get to its stiff peak consistency, that's when you want to chop your butter into small cubes. The butter is going to get added once the meringue is at room temperature. Now, sometimes what I like to do is once it's reached stiff peaks is just leave it for 15 minutes to make sure it's definitely cool enough to add the butter. Otherwise, this is going to go sloppy because the butter will melt in it, and that's not what we're going for here. But as you can see, the mixture gets thicker and thicker as you're adding the butter and gets it well incorporated. Once you've added all of your butter, I leave it mixing for another few minutes just to make sure it's all incorporated, and I put the speed up to a high, about number 10 for this. And you can see here how smooth and glossy and delicious this looks. Now, this is the stage that you can add any flavorings. I was just making a vanilla buttercream, but you could add melted chocolate as long as it's cooled. You could add lemon flavoring, whatever it is that you want to flavor it. And because of the butter addition, it can go a bit yellowy, so I add a little bit of lilac food colouring because it helps to counteract the yellow colour and just helps it to be that little bit more white. You may find that there's quite a few air bubbles in your buttercream at this point, so what I do is swap to the paddle attachment and mix that for a good 5 to 10 minutes until it's nice and smooth. And that's how I make my Swiss meringue buttercream. Enjoy!